Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Survive This Crit, where my co-host Kylie and I combine our love for horror movies and RPGs and deep dive into some of our favorite horror movies. This episode, we're going to be looking at The Sixth Sense. Just to let all our fans know out there, now that we're done with our Halloween spectacular, or should I say spooktacular, all our episodes will be releasing every other week again.
Yay! All right.
Kylie, how are you doing?
I am doing well. I am embracing spooky season in full and just happy to be here. What about you? You just got back from a big trip, you know, across the
You're right.
pond.
Yes, I did go across the pond to the motherland of Italia,
Okay,
where
can
I
you say
ate
something in Italian now?
Dove il bagno?
Where's the bathroom?
Yeah,
Oh my God. That's nice. That was actually really good.
yeah, or Le Mowgli. She's my wife.
Oh,
Le mi Mowgli.
was that something you had to say often? Were the Italian men just swarming over Gaia or something?
Yes, I had to beat them all off with a stale piece of bread. No, it's just something I would like practice in my mind a lot. Like, oh, I was doing Duolingo, while I was out there.
So you were
I was
daydreaming
like,
of being able to get in a fight with someone and then say El Miagio.
yeah, Miagio, bibbidi bobbidi boo. Yeah, that'll go over well.
Well, I'm glad you're back. Do you have any other high moments?
Let's see. I was telling you earlier, we did a little cooking class. Definitely was humbled by the chef there because he was asking us to do things that I was not prepared to do.
Oh.
Um, Mostly just handling heavy equipment. I'll leave it at that.
Oh.
No, it's
Oh.
all good. It ended up tasting delicious, so it was great.
Good. Good. Good.
Kylie, it's Halloween season. What have you been doing for in preparation for Halloween?
Well, I have been preparing for our party by kind of doing some research on drinks I want to make because I'm your drink and decorator for the party.
Hmm. The
So
Drinkerator?
the drinkerator. And yeah, we're recording this in advance. So by the time this comes out, it'll be almost Thanksgiving. So what are we doing for Thanksgiving?
Eating. I don't know.
Yes.
Do you even know all the courses my family serves?
Holy.
Yeah, so it's always my mom's side of the family we get together. And the courses go, we lay out some appetizers. You got your cheese trays, your meats, cold cuts, all that good stuff. And then, we'll finish making the food. You got your typical main course of like sides and salads and turkey and everything going on. But then after the main course, then we have dessert, as one would expect. And everyone brings
Yes.
like 10 pies. And then we all have coffee. And then one
Oh,
brave soul has to brave it out and go buy several party packs from Del Taco and bring it back for the family to eat
are you serious? You guys end the
after
night with
dessert.
Del Taco? That's wild.
And then it's a family tradition, Kylie. You can't break tradition.
You weren't
Okay.
kidding when it was like 12 courses. Who has Del
So you
Taco at the. Okay, go ahead.
don't question the tradition. You just go with it. Yeah. So we're eating burritos and tacos after that. And then some of the ants will then brave it out for the Black Friday sales.
I guess you need the tacos to power through the Black Friday sales because all the tryptophan from the turkey is going to make you sleepy.
Exactly. So that is a typical family Thanksgiving.
So, Nicholas, back to the film that we are doing. Will you give us a
Yes.
summary?
All right. Personal summary of The Sixth Sense before I
Oh
pull up
my
the
gosh.
IMDb summary. There's a kid and he can't get over his own problems and he's socially awkward and he sees dead people.
Nick, I feel like you're kind of pointing inward toward yourself, except at
Oh
the
wait,
end there.
and there's an adult male who can't named Malcolm Crowe who is completely oblivious to what is actually going on around him
That's
because
valid.
because
And
wouldn't you know
obviously,
it, he's been dead for a year and he hasn't figured it out.
yeah.
Here we go. Here's the
Okay.
actual summary from IMDb.
Okay.
Malcolm Crowe is a child psychologist who receives an award on the same night that he is visited by a very unhappy ex patient. After this encounter, Crowe takes on the task of curing a young boy with the same ills as the ex patient. This boy sees dead people. Crow spends a lot of time with the boy, much to the dismay of his wife. Cole's mom is at her wits' end with what to do about her son's increasing problems. Crow is the boy's only hope.
So, a little bit about this film. This film was actually released August 6th, 1999. The budget for this film was 40 million, but they spent another 15 million for marketing. So they had a pretty large marketing budget. The film opened with 26 million the first weekend and grossed 672,806,292 dollars worldwide. And kind of how that was split up was that it was 293 million domestic in the US and 379 million internationally. So it was actually a much more popular international film than it was a US based film. This film was written and directed by M. Night Shyamalan, and it won a ton of Critics' Choice Awards, People's Choice Awards, Teen Choice Award films for Best Drama, Best Actor, but they were totally snubbed, in my opinion, at the Oscars. They were nominated for Best Supporting Actor, Best Supporting Actress, Best Original Screenplay, Best Editing, Best Direction, and Best Picture, and it did not win any Oscars that year.
Do you know which movies went out for those categories?
I can pull them up
Okay,
real
yeah, I
quick
think I
so we
remember.
can do a comparison. 2000
Yeah,
winners.
so we can decide for ourselves whether or not we are smarter than the Academy.
Okay, so Michael Caine won Best Supporting Actor over Haley Joel Osment, which was, I mean, Michael
Oh,
Caine is
that's
super
funny.
talented.
That's
I
funny. I
just think,
picture old Michael Caine and juxtaposed with young Haley Joel Osment, and
yeah.
just Michael Caine be like, "Get away, kid! My award."
Angelina Jolie won Best Supporting Actress for Girl Interrupted over Toni Collette. The best editing was The Matrix, which doesn't surprise me.
Hmm.
Best Original Screenplay, which was American Beauty, which also doesn't surprise me. But Best Director and Best Picture both went to American Beauty. So American Beauty just kind of swept the floor that year, which makes sense. Is like people talk about it in film school and stuff. Like they make a huge deal out of this movie because it's beautifully done. But I personally like The Sixth Sense more. That's just me.
You know what?
Um,
I've never seen those other movies, so they can all suck it because I've never heard of them. And yet here we are. I'm watching The Sixth Sense and talking about it. So
whoops.
there you go.
Exactly. So the distributor for this was Buena Vista Pictures, aka Disney, and the production
Hmm.
companies involved were Disney and Spyglass Entertainment. This film starred Haley Joel Osment, Bruce Willis, and Toni Collette, and it's actually considered to be one of the highest grossing horror films of all time until it was surpassed by It in 2017. And
Yes.
in the year 2000, this film actually was like the top selling DVD and VHS.
So all just further evidence for why this is actually a really great film. And
Yes.
basically a horror staple, probably for a lot of people.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And then, so even though it was a huge success, the Disney executive who gave permission to everyone to make this film, David Vogel, who bought the script, he was fired because he didn't consult his superiors or supervisors before buying the film. And the
Yeah,
film
I
was
heard about
actually,
that. So he bought it for 2.25 million, something like that. And
mm-hmm,
then the board was just so angry and they were like, that's it, you're out. Because he refused to renegotiate some of the directive power that
mm-hmm,
Disney would have in the film, he was then fired for spending so much money on this movie.
yeah. And they actually sold the film to Spyglass Entertainment, but they kept the distribution rights and 12.5% of box office takings. And they kept it at a low percentage because they assumed the movie wasn't going to do well. And it definitely, like, I'm sure, far surpassed their expectations. So, Nick, we're now at your favorite point of Rotten Tomatoes. What
Oh
do you
boy.
think the
Okay.
tomato meter was versus the audience score?
Well, Kylie, I hate to inform you that this time I absolutely know what the tomato meter was because I came in well prepared, and you'll see why later on.
Okay.
Critic score was, man,
You
forgot.
really
I'm
hyped
forgetful.
yourself up. You really
I'm
hyped yourself
forgetful.
up.
86%.
Yeah, you're right. And then audience?
Oh, ooh, 90%.
There you go. Look at him. So, with Letterboxd, what do you think on a scale of 1 to 5 how it holds up with modern audiences?
4.6.
Actually, you're not far off. I got a 4 out of 5. Not higher than that, though.
What?
Yeah. So the reviews, like most of these reviews, actually are about Toni Collette specifically, which I think is hilarious. But a
Oh,
couple of the other reviews are one by Derek Tionitz. Sorry if I got that wrong. The twist is great, but what's the most admirable aspect about this movie is how brilliantly it closes all the arcs of the movie, which is one thing I really like about it too. Everyone's story
mhm.
actually has an ending. Kemper said, I've watched this movie 3 times in the past 2 weeks. I think that says something about how brilliant this movie is.
Mm.
So,
Or just, what she chooses to do with her time. But either way, it is a good movie.
so do we want to go into thoughts and opinions and then play some trivia?
Yeah, well, first tell me, what were people saying about Toni Collette?
Oh my gosh, there were so many. It was mostly just like weird stuff like mommy, Tony. That was like the general theme. Let me pull it up though.
Oh, I mean, like, oh, hey, mommy.
Yeah, more like that then. Toni Collette has some up kids. I screamed seeing her in that look. Yes, 1999 Toni Collette, call me. Some of the reviews are just Toni Collette. And
I don't know.
yeah. And
I
then
don't
a
see
lot of
it.
the other reviews were super long. That's why I didn't include them because like people were such big fans that they wanted to write essays about this movie. So that's why I also it's like I need to take one sentence from 2 reviews. I can't read your whole paragraph on here. But it was yeah, there was a lot about Toni Collette on there. So what did you think about this movie? What are your thoughts and opinions?
My thoughts and opinions. I thought this movie was great. One thing I enjoyed was, even after not seeing it for 12 years, the ending with Cole and his mom in the car, that got me. That got me. Like, I enjoyed the movie like the whole way through. It was very nice to see this charming story of a kid being helped by, Bruce Willis to get through some of his most traumatic issues, learning how to deal with something he doesn't understand in the world, and
Yeah.
actually having, kind of like a sort of like a father figure.
Yeah.
But
Oh,
that
absolutely.
but then that last scene where Cole is just like, he's finally taken up the call to action, which we all thought was actually a horror thing, but the call to action that
Mm-hmm.
is, hey, I have a role in this world to help the people who have unfinished business, you know, get to their closure. And
Mm-hmm.
I have to boldly take that on as a 10-year-old. That's a big step. And then to use that for his mother to give closure to both his mom and her mom, like that just, yeah, it made me want to tear up a little bit. The last little tidbit, my little experience with this movie was, it was very funny that I knew the twist well before I ever watched the movie the first time either.
Oh.
Because here's the thing, I grew up a huge fan of Adam Sandler movies. And for anyone else who's a fan of Adam Sandler movies, one of his big movies at the time when I was about 7 was 50 First Dates. And I would watch that movie again and again and again. And what do they do in that movie? In that movie, they watch The Sixth Sense. And at the end, Drew Barrymore gives away the twist. She goes, I can't believe it, guys. I had no idea Bruce Willis was a ghost.
Yeah.
I always had that in the back of my mind. I was like, oh, Bruce Willis is a ghost. I was waiting to see how that all fits together when I first watched it as a teenager. I was like, oh, okay, now I get it.
Was the payoff worth it for you based on how they did it, even though you knew what was going to happen?
No, I would say that the payoff was not worth it. The twist there, because I already knew, just when a twist gets revealed to you, a good like when you're watching the movie, it mind blows you. You're like, wait, what? And then you got to rewatch the movie to make sure you catch every little hint,
Yeah,
because you want to make sure you knew the clues are there, because we all have to feel like we're really smart, right?
it's true. That's true. So I loved this movie too. I have a very personal story about the first time I saw it, but I'm going to save that for the next episode for our Pester the Guesters. So make sure to tune into that. But this film, I love it. I watch it every year. I cry every time I see it, like without a doubt. And it's just a really beautiful story. And I think the writing is great. It's really quotable. There's definitely some jump scares which are fun, but it's not making your heart race the entire time you're watching it. So, Nick, would you consider this a horror film?
You know what? I would just barely qualify as a horror film because it's got dead people walking around. But it feels more, I guess it fit more into that thriller category, because that's where I typically throw movies that aren't quite terrifying, that I don't consider terrifying enough.
Mm,
But I do have to concede that the rest of the world has called this movie a horror film, and I can't really, if the rest of the world is saying it, you know what? I guess it's got to be true. Plus, if it's not a horror film, then it's not the highest grossing horror film for 17 years, and I can't take that away from it. So
that's fair. That is valid. I definitely consider this a horror film. I will say it's a bit emotionally more complex than a lot of the other horror films. Like, it's not as simple of a story as like a slasher. There's a lot more story arcs to connect. There's just a lot more happening. And I think that's why I like it so much. It's not trying too hard to tell a story, but it wraps everything up really nicely. Because you know how there's some of those horror films that are trying so hard to be superior and so hard to tell like a elevated horror story, and then you watch it and you're just like, there, why was there a naked grandma? Were they
I'm sorry, was that a dig on it?
No, it actually wasn't. But I was thinking of a few different things, and I wasn't going to say them because we may watch them. But that's just a common trope that I see in some of those films where they try really, really hard to
I mean, like
be
the movie
elevated.
Bodies, Bodies, Bodies?
I actually haven't seen that still. So,
Consider yourself lucky then.
okay. But I liked this film. I think it's definitely horror. It goes on my Halloween movie watch list every year, without a doubt. And, it's just one of those two that gives me a good cry when I need it. So,
The thing that sets this apart than other horror movies is the fact that there is elements of horror, like trying to scare you, but it's not like the movie's motive is to try and scare you. It's rather a consequence of the actual story it's trying to drive forward, which is the you know getting Cole to go through his character arc and his growth of having a supernatural ability and learning to grasp it and make it his own.
yeah, I would agree with that. And I just really enjoy this movie. So, are you ready for monster movie trivia? Dun, dun.
Let's do it.
So, for our audience who have not seen monster movie trivia before, what we do is we do some trivia about the film that we just watched, and Nick has 3 lives. Every life that he loses, he gets a slash. And if he doesn't make it, then he's dead. He's killed off. He does not win monster movie trivia. So I think, Nick, you have about a 50-50 chance. I feel like you win half of them and then you die in about half of them. Is that a
I
correct
think
assessment?
I think you're being a little charitable there. I probably lose more than half. For people who have not seen this before, as is tradition, I always try and come in unprepared for the audience's enjoyment, of course, for their comedic pleasure.
Yes, yes. All right.
I do this all for the audience.
Alrighty. So, number one, how old was Haley Joe Osment when the film was released?
Not that hard. Oh boy. Wait, you said released. Released as in like it came out into the movie theaters. Okay.
Yes.
12 years old.
Eh, you're wrong. He
Do I
was
get a
11.
I
Slash.
should get a margin of error. What?
No.
To be fair, he looks like he's 6 years old at all times until he suddenly got old and became an adult.
You have to make a dying noise. Slash. So, as you can see, audience, maybe I was really being charitable because he's already gotten one wrong, and that was one of my easy questions. Where was this movie filmed?
Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Born and raised.
What
On the
does the
playground is where M. Night Shyamalan spent most of his days.
Oh, are we wrapping now?
Yeah. Have you not seen The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air before?
No. I didn't grow up with TV, Nick. I saw movies and that was it.
Ugh.
Okay. Anyways, what does the term the sixth sense mean?
Well, there are five human senses, Kylie: touch, taste, smell, hearing, and sight.
Okay.
At least three of those I do poorly in. The sixth sense is exactly that. It is the ability to see dead people, or so some claim.
Yeah.
So it's an extra human sensory. I don't know how scientific you want me to get into this, or is that good enough?
I mean, that was good enough, but I would be down to hear more. Apparently, you've done research on this.
No, I'm just pulling this all out of thin air.
Okay. So the term supposedly originated in the 1800s to describe paranormal sensations that cannot be explained through the five senses. So you
There
got
you
one
go.
right. Good job. All right. The next question is
That's two right, just so you know.
no, you didn't get the first question. Oh, you got two right. Yes, you're right. Sorry. My bad. Number four. What is the name of the first patient who appears on screen?
I mean, I know the actor who played him, Donnie Wahlberg's character, Vincent Gray. Vincent Gray.
Yeah, good job.
Oh, thanks. I wrote that one down too. Obviously, I wasn't cheating and looking at my notebook, but I remember
Oh,
writing that down.
obviously. Good job. Number five, what item did Lynn's ghost's mother bring to Cole?
Lynn is Cole's mother, right?
Yeah.
It's the little bumblebee pendant, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, thank the Lord.
All right. How did the little girl die?
Oh, she was poisoned by her mom,
What was she poisoned by?
by poor motherhood. No, what was she poisoned by? You said
Yeah.
poison. I don't. That's not the
Okay.
question.
She was poisoned by disinfectant. I'm not going to slash you for that because I added that just to make it a little bit more difficult. What now famous celebrity did his first audition for the role of Cole and did not get the part?
Michael Sarah.
Yeah. Damn, I thought you were going to get that wrong. You may actually
No,
win.
poor Michael Sarah. Alan from Barbie movie. That's how he'll
Yeah.
always be remembered. That and super bad.
And Scott Pilgrim.
Oh,
Duh.
and Scott Pilgrim, duh. But I can't picture him in this movie, so thank goodness he didn't get the role.
Yeah. What language does one of Cole's toys speak? And what does he say?
What? What language does his toy speak?
Yeah. When he's like playing with
Which
the little figurines.
what?
Okay. So,
Give
do you want the
jog my
answer?
memory a little bit. No, no, no. Jog my memory here. What was the toy? You said it was a figurine. A figurine of what?
Remember how
Gonna
he had
get
a bunch of different little types of army men and like clergies and stuff? Clergies, just little figurines, like army sized. They're that small.
okay. Okay. What language were the army men speaking?
And like clergy people, yeah, because he had a bunch of
And the
different ones that.
clergy. Oh, okay. Okay. Now that's kind of running back to me. He's talking Latin.
What did he say?
I have it written down. You know what? I'm going to take the hit, but I'm going to look it up. I didn't write it in Latin. I wrote the English translation. So you say the Latin thing, I'll say what it means in English,
Okay. De profundis clamo a te domine,
which means out of the depths I cry to you, O Lord.
which is from Psalms 140.
Hmm.
So, you got another slash. Yeah. Okay.
Ah!
What happens to a room when ghosts are present and upset?
Oh, the temperature drops.
Good job. Good job. That was basic. Yeah. What does the sign say on Cole's tent?
Boys rule, girls drool. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. It just says do not enter.
Yeah. So you
Oh,
actually
thank God.
lived. Congratulations, Nick. You survived
Woo!
monster movie trivia.
Woo!
Good job. You did it. That was the first one in a long time, and I'm really happy for you.
Here's a little reverse trivia question for you, Kylie.
Okay.
Because that interesting one I found. What physical feature do all spirit spotters, seers, I don't know, there's a specific term for them. What physical feature do they all share?
Oh my gosh. I saw this fact too, and I didn't know what it meant. Will you remind me? Because I do not remember.
They all have a streak of or a small patch of white hair on their head.
That's what it was. Yeah. I remember reading that and being like, huh, that's cool. And then totally forgetting about it. Forgot to write that one
I thought it
down.
was especially cool because I too have a small patch of gray hair on my head. What I found out recently is that on the top of my head, the patch of gray hair is a genetic thing. The ones on the side are because I'm a stress case, you know. So come at me, people who know me. But you know what? I've had a patch of gray hair on my head since I was like 13 or 12 years old.
Nick, that probably means you can see dead people and you haven't been utilizing that this whole time. What if we
You
become a
know,
ghost hunting podcast?
we could. I have not. I'm not saying I've seen dead people, but I am saying other people have claimed I've seen dead people before.
Wait, okay. Other people have claimed that you have seen dead people.
Yes, yes.
I'm sorry. Is there a story behind this?
Yes, there is a story. So I was about 4 years old, and I was, you know, every Sunday my family would go to church, and my dad was very involved with the church. Basically, well, really, his whole family was very involved with the church. So my dad was kind of like this go-to guy for the church whenever they needed something done. So I remember we were going to church one Sunday, and someone came up asking my dad to help during the mass, but you know, like off in the background somewhere. And being four, I just wanted to go and be with my dad and see what he was doing because I was curious. So I went off, and he was talking with this person, and I got pretty bored after about 10 minutes or so. So I started to walk off, and I went to go find the rest of my family, who was you know, sitting in the pews, and I got kind of lost looking for them, which is a little sad because it's not
Oh,
really that big of a room if you were to actually see it. But I got lost. I couldn't see where anyone was. And then this usher came by, and he, you know, brought me to my family. And my mom was kind of shocked. She was like, "What? Nick, how did you find us?" Because she even knew like it'd probably be difficult to
oh.
like find me. I was like, "How did you find us, Nick?" And I went, the usher showed me this old man." And she was like, "What?" And then she says she looked up and she didn't see any old usher there. And then at least a month later, or maybe a few weeks, whatever, I see a picture of my grandma with my grandpa. And for anyone who doesn't really know my background, I've never seen either of my grandpas before in my entire life. They all passed away before I was born. So I see this picture of my grandpa with my grandma. I point it out to my older brother, and I go, "That's the man who helped me." And
Whoa.
so my whole family jumped onto this bandwagon that, oh, Nick has seen the ghost of grandpa. And I look at it now and I think, no, did I? Because I remember there
Maybe.
being distinctively this old usher who's just a familiar face at the church, and I just suspect I probably saw him. And then being a 4-year-old, I thought all old people look alike, and probably just thought I saw him in the picture. I don't know.
That's really cool, actually. I that's really cool.
So yeah, Skyly, I guess
Nick
I
sees
see
dead
dead people.
people.
Yeah. Would you mind telling that person next to you right now that I see dead people?
Don't tell me that. I'm gonna get anxiety. Okay, so as we're gonna transition over into our deep dive, this is the portion where we take aspects of behind the scenes of the film or separate but equally important topics to tie into the analyzing of the film per se. So we're gonna start with Bruce Willis, and I think Nick, you have something fun to start us off here.
Yes. Okay. So a little fun story about how Bruce Willis ended up starring in this film. So a couple years before, let's see, it was, I believe, 1997,
Mm-hmm.
maybe 96, somewhere along that time frame. Bruce Willis was starring and producing in a movie called Broadway Brawler, which was going to be basically an ice hockey movie. And about 3 weeks into making the movie, he fires the entire cast and crew. And basically, Disney loses a lot of money off of this. And the whole project gets scrapped. And in order to help make up for this loss, Bruce Willis signs a contract with Disney saying that he will star in 3 other movies and take a significant pay cut. So those movies were, it was Armageddon in 1998, The Sixth Sense in 1999, and then The Kid in the year 2000. Which I never seen Armageddon. I've seen obviously The Sixth Sense and The Kid. He
I
was,
didn't realize he had to sign on for 3 films because of that. That's crazy. That's a lot of
yeah,
work.
yeah, and he busted them out 1 year right after the other because Armageddon was 98, Sixth Sense was 99, and The Kid was the year 2000.
Yeah, that's insane. That's really impressive that he was able to get it done that quickly.
What
So
was
I have.
really interesting was
Mhm.
people so credited him for on this movie really taking an active role in trying to make sure that everyone else was doing their best. So it's not like he was there and was like, "Oh, I have to be here." No, he actively took an interest in being a strong supporting cast member for everyone else.
Yeah, that's
And
what I got a lot too. I have some quotes on that because he really was he said he's quoted to have saying that he actually enjoyed the role. Like he doesn't normally get to play gentle and introspective types of characters, with his career being in Die Hard, Fifth Element, Pulp Fiction, Unbreakable. He's not always getting to play like quieter introspective characters, but he was
mm,
described by a lot of the cast as being very loving and like supportive, like you said. So he one of my favorite things that he did during this production was he made sure it was a good time for everyone involved. So he would DJ parties for the adult crew members at night. So one of the quotes from M. Night Shyamalan was, Bruce definitely introduced me to the notions of partying and letting loose. Back in those days, he was a big DJ and the parties were super fun. And Shyamalan was only 28 in this film. So he said he gives Bruce Willis credit for giving him his first hangover. And he said that Bruce Willis kept giving him shots that he kept calling candy.
I want to picture Bruce Willis. I'm assuming when you say DJ, like we're talking about the full-on DJ. He's got the turntables
I
and
don't
he's got the
know.
headphones. I
I hope
want that
so.
picture of Bruce Willis.
Maybe I'll find a way to Photoshop that for you and get it for Christmas or something.
One thing I was gonna say too is because you were saying like this is one of the few roles where he gets to be gentle. I was gonna make a little joke and say this is also one of the few roles nowadays where he gets to have hair.
Yeah, exactly. So Donnie Wahlberg described him as being really curious and humble of a person. He said, I remember when we went to the premiere of The Sixth Sense that he just kept hugging me and saying, You did so good. You really helped the movie. But afterwards, when we talked, he was like, What did you think? You think this movie is going to do well? And Donnie Wahlberg says, I love the script. So I was like, this is going to be the best movie ever. And he was like, really? You think so? So he's just described as being really humble and not presumptuous, not assuming. So it's cool and refreshing, I think, to see an actor like that. And another interesting thing for this film specifically was that Bruce Willis was left handed, so he had to learn to write with his right hand. So that way, the reveal of the wedding ring would actually work in the film.
That's
So,
impressive. I cannot, for the life of me, write with my left hand. I could barely write with my right hand.
well, you're an engineer. That kind of makes sense.
I'm
So,
really good at typing. Let's see. Oh, but you mentioned Donnie Wahlberg. Little small tidbit about him. For those who don't know, Donnie Wahlberg, brother to Mark Wahlberg, co-owner of the Wahlburgers, some great burger restaurant. But he started out as a singer on a little known 80s group called New Kids on the Block, for anyone who's a big fan of the 80s.
oh my
I say
gosh.
little known, but they were actually a big deal back then. So that's where Donnie Wahlberg's career started off. Then he got to do this part, and
Which
to me, it was just crazy. For anyone who doesn't know this, he lost 43 pounds to play this role, and he was only on screen for 3 minutes. I will give him props for how great of a job he did. I do think he's a little bit insane for wanting to lose all that weight, but I don't think he actually knew how long he was going to be on screen.
Well, for this role too, so he went fully method. So in addition to
Mhm.
losing weight, he moved to New York and like stayed in a friend's apartment. He didn't bring money. He would just fast for a few days at a time and then just eat vegetables and chew gum all day and just kind of walk in the streets. And then when he was in Philadelphia for filming, he actually slept in the park one night to really get like in the mindset of that role.
I don't know. Did his characters seem? I don't think we knew too much about Vincent Gray as a character, besides the fact that he was also a seer.
I think he was trying to psychoanalyze a character like that who is so mentally disturbed that functioning isn't an option. So I think maybe in Donnie Wahlberg's mind, he's like, oh, it would make sense if this character is homeless. So I'm going to sleep in a park and travel without money so I can see, like, really live that experience. And I think that's also why he was cutting so much food out too, so he could really play such a mentally ill character.
The way where I thought you might have been going with that, but I thought it was hilarious. Is like, oh, he thought this person is mentally ill, so of course he moved to New York, got an apartment there.
I mean, there's some wild
No,
folks in New York. I love New
there's
York
wild
though.
folks everywhere, but yeah, especially New York.
So I want to move on to Toni Collette if you're ready.
Yeah, let's hear it. What do we know about Toni Collette?
So Toni Collette actually had a shaved head throughout the film. So she wore a wig the entire time they filmed.
Wait, why did she
Supposedly,
shave her head?
so I think it was for either another role or audition at the time. But because of this, Shyamalan and Bruce Willis loved her audition so much, but they were worried that Disney wasn't going to hire her because she came in bald for the audition. So what they actually did, they agreed they liked her the best. So they didn't even show Disney her audition tape. But I believe she was bald because of another role, possibly. And she actually brought in her own wig for filming. So it was like possibly a wig from Velvet Goldmine, but it wasn't something that the costume department prepared for her. It was like her own wig, which, considering it was her own, it was really well done. It looks like a good
Hmm.
wig the whole time. It doesn't look trashy or anything. So,
Honestly, I couldn't even tell that was a wig. So,
right?
good,
She
good,
looked
good
she looked
quality.
great in this film. I get why everyone was commenting all the crazy comments that they were. She looked amazing. But I didn't even realize it was Toni Collette because I haven't watched a lot of her stuff. But when I was rewatching this, I was like, oh my gosh, that is Toni Collette. It's crazy because I've been mostly watching things with her in it 20 years later, not in the late 90s. Toni Collette actually started having some spooky occurrences while this was filming. So she would start meditating a lot, but she would wake up at night and look over at the clock, and it was always a repeated number. Like it was 111 or 333 or 434. That was like a spooky occurrence she kept having throughout filming in the hotel they were staying at. And, Toni Collette is a big household name now. She also was in Hereditary, Knives Out, Little Miss Sunshine, and a whole bunch of other things. So that was what I pretty much had on her.
But I did a little bit of digging on the background of Haley Joel Osment, if you want to hear some of that.
Me too. Yeah, you go ahead and I will add on to what you have.
So, how about I just start off with his basic biography here, what I wrote down.
Yeah.
So, for anyone who doesn't really know much about Haley Joel Osment, he was a huge name in the late 90s. He was like the go-to child actor kid, and rightfully so because he was very skilled. So, other than The Sixth Sense, he was in Secondhand Lions. He was in this movie called AI with Jude Law. He was very, very talented, but he got his start actually in a Pizza Hut commercial.
Cool.
And part of why he ended up being as skilled as he is now, well, actually, not just now, but back in the late 90s, he's the son of a stage actor, Eugene Osment, which maybe you've heard of him. I hadn't really heard of him before. But the
I
point
haven't
is
heard of
that,
him, but his style makes sense that he had a stage actor dad because his acting is not traditionally like he's not who you'd think of for on-camera acting. He's just so good. He's just so he
yeah.
reaches people in a different way than most on-camera actors.
And a lot of people, including M. Night Shyamalan, were just rightfully impressed by how much talent this 8, 9, 10, whatever age he was for any of his films, how much he was coming forth. Like, for example, the day that Haley came in
Mm-hmm.
to audition, he mentions like, "Oh, I read the script," and M. Night Shyamalan goes, "You mean like you read your part for this scene like a couple times?" He goes, "No, no, no, I read the script, the entire script a few times." And he goes, "What?" And obviously, I assume a lot of that is just like encouragement from his father, whatnot. I tried to do
Mm-hmm.
a little bit of digging to see if there was more of this, if this was a typical traumatic childhood backstory. But actually, it turned out his family is very supportive of him. He had a pretty good childhood. His mother's sixth grade teacher. He has a younger sister. For those of you who are fans of Hannah Montana or some of her other work, it's Emily Osment.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. I don't think I realized they were siblings. I knew they had the same name. That's cool.
So yeah, Emily Osment, what was it? Plays Lily in Hannah Montana, um, one of the kids in Spy Kids, and then she had that other show that came out a few years ago about cooking or something
Young
like
and
that.
hungry.
There we go, Young and Hungry. But then later on, right around his teenage years, he kind of dropped off and he focused more just on his education. He attended NYU. He currently works as a screenwriter. And I think one of his more recent works, he's in a movie back in 2014 called Sex Ed, which at first I was looking at it and was confused because of the Netflix show Sex Education.
Yeah.
I was like, is he
Oh,
in
that's
that?
cool.
But I know he definitely, I think he played a small part in the movie The Boys, where he basically got to redo his role as Cole. He played a kid who was famous in the 90s, but actually had a superpower of seeing not dead people, but being able to predict or read people's minds or something like that.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
then
yeah. I remember
basically
he
it
was
was a
on that.
spoof of himself. He played a spoof of himself in the TV show The Boys, is
He
what that
comes
was.
on TV shows a lot portraying himself, I've noticed. But I also read that he's also had a successful voiceover career. But I
Oh
had,
yes, actually, that's so that was the biggest one that got me excited about him,
yeah.
which was the last thing I want to mention for anyone who's a Kingdom Hearts fan. I'm a Kingdom Hearts fan. I found out that he is the voice of the main character Sora, and I was like, "What? No way!" This guy,
Mind
I loved it.
blown.
Mind
That's
blown. So, anyways, that was all the research I did with Haley Joel Osment. I had one other tidbit, but I want to see if you covered it
okay.
with
So
your stuff.
for Haley Joel Osment, he's really described by others as someone who just really enjoyed playing with other kids, but he was also deeply brilliant. So he knew how to have conversations with adults and interact with adults at a really young age without, the normal parental guidance. He, like you said, he described his career as a positive experience as a childhood actor, unlike the common trope of childhood stars that like spin into darkness. He is quoted saying, all my friends like movies, but I like how they treat me normal when I come home. It's good to be a normal kid when the acting is done. And it's primarily because he was in adult films. He was in films made for adults. So the kids didn't really know him as famous. I'll link in the show notes a cool article that he had in 1999 and a cool behind the scenes video from the film because he is just so incredibly well spoken for an 11-year-old in these interviews. You can tell he's very, very smart and introspective in a way that we just don't see a lot today, or we don't celebrate a lot today. So his audition, though, for this film was, like you said, he had come in reading the whole script, unlike most kids, but he also came in and auditioned in an Oxford shirt and tie, which is another thing that got M. Night Shyamalan's attention because all the kids were coming in like baggy t-shirts, and M. Night Shyamalan was like, he wasn't thinking he was actually going to be able to find a child actor in LA because they were, going to be filming in Philadelphia. So they were considering hosting auditions out there. But and he said that because kids in LA, according to him, tend to lose their naturalness and they tend to lose the innocence that they had. But because he saw Haley Joel Osment's audition and he saw just how serious and how innocent and how natural an actor could be, he was able to hire him and know that that was the right choice. And M. Night Shyamalan also said that like Haley Joel Osment took his work seriously. They were able to treat him basically like an adult on set. They didn't have to baby him. So, and one other thing is, I didn't realize he was in Forrest Gump. So that's pretty cool.
Oh yes, that was his breakout role, his first ever. He was Forrest Gump Jr.
Yeah. So is there anything else you had on Haley Joel Osment?
Yeah, there was one thing, like I said, I wanted to see if you were going to touch on it, but you didn't. One thing
Okay.
that I thought was interesting was apparently in order to help get him to cry for certain scenes,
Mm-hmm.
if he wasn't like able to cry on cue, they would have Bruce Willis come in and yell his lines as Malcolm to the kid, to Haley, and then that would get him in the right mindset of crying. Like that's why I thought like maybe this that's what got me into looking like, oh, okay, let's see if this follows his whole backstory is the common traumatic child star. What was it? Just turns out no, that was just something that they all agreed upon as like this is how we're gonna get you to cry. I was
Yeah,
like,
well,
okay.
the videos I saw, he was able to cry on cue without anything like that. But it would make sense. I mean, if you're doing 15 takes of this a day and you're crying about the same thing over and over, after a while, it probably gets really difficult to keep doing that. So it's nice that he was able to have a supportive production team help him cry. But one other thing I noted was M. Night Shyamalan actually makes a cameo appearance in this film as Dr. Hill, the doctor who
Oh
Lynn
yeah,
talks to after the birthday party.
M. Night Shyamalan is famous for that. Are you, I didn't catch it, but I'm not surprised that you say that because he did the same thing in The Village.
Yeah. And so his parents were both doctors, so that's why he jumped into that particular role. But he said that he was unhappy with how his performance turned out. Like that scene was supposed to be a lot longer and he ended up cutting a lot of it down.
Because he's so critical of himself. But he seems like a pretty critical guy. He takes himself very seriously, which is good for him. He does a lot of good work. So
So, do you want to talk about M. Night Shyamalan? Because everything that I do, every film we talk about, I find one thing that usually just like sucks me in and makes me research a whole bunch more. So, I ended up watching a lot of M. Night Shyamalan interviews.
but what was the thing that sucked you in?
The thing that sucked me in is that he is really like one of the things that he really enjoys about his career is like he's a really silly, fun loving guy. That's how he's self described, how other people describe him. he's not sadistic, but he really likes being mischievous with his audience and adding a little bit of unsettling features, but not just as he describes in a couple interviews. He's like, I can't make torture. That's not what I want to do. I want to be mischievous and add a little bit of spooks and darkness, but that's not what this is about. There's a greater story at hand. So he describes himself as telling dark stories about the good of human beings. And he likes towing the line between nihilism and optimism. So I liked that he seemed very self-assured in who he was as a director. And I think that's one reason why I liked him so much, because he was only 28 when he made this film. So he was young when this came
Hmm.
out, and he's done so much. He's done The Visit, Split franchise, Devil, so much more. And he's always had a knack for like
Actually, Kylie, you have to use the right nomenclature. It's not the Split franchise. It's the Israel 177 trilogy. Please
okay,
get it right.
that thing. And he has like it seems like he has a really good knack for horror and supernatural, but telling interesting stories within it. And he's also had interesting spin-offs, like not spin-offs, but one-off films. Like he was a part of Stuart Little, The Last Airbender, and She's All That.
Don't ever say that. Don't ever say that movie
The
title
Last
again, please.
Airbender. I know that was not one of his better ones, but we're here to talk about his horror films, not some of his other stuff.
Yes, we'll get into the other stuff later.
So
Talk about it.
supposedly his cumulative gross for his films is actually like over 3.4 billion globally. So
Ooh,
he's had a successful career. There's no doubt about that. And he's described as being a visionary who likes to focus on the whole of the story, not just the shot for shot process. Because, you know, when you're filming something, you may only do 2 or 3 lines of something, and it's really easy to get hyper fixated on each individual scene that you're filming and not focus on the arc and focus on how everything connects. But I think he does a really good job of focusing on this is the entirety of the story, not just here's what I want this one scene to look like. So he also, though, had a really interesting process for directing children because he had experience doing it. And he was like, he in an interview talks about how no one wants to watch a kid sad on screen. It's really emotionally draining for adult audience members, and it's really hard to come back from. So he actually focused on directing Haley to portray emotions like fear and anger, things that would promote him to be a fighter, not for people to take pity on him. And I feel like he took those notes really well because I was thinking about that quote and kind of reminiscing on the movie. And whenever he's like in tears and stuff, usually it's coming from a place of like frustration or fear or anger. It's not from like, I feel bad for myself and I want you to feel bad for me too. Some people, in regards to the inspiration of the film, they thought that he took his inspiration from the Nickelodeon film Are You Afraid of the Dark? But
oh yeah, I heard
according
about this.
yeah, but according to M. Night Shyamalan, he's never seen it. He said his inspiration
Sure, M. Night Shyamalan. Sure. No, I'll believe it.
he said his inspiration came from when he was writing in his notebook about a little boy at a funeral. And the image that came to mind was that he was on the stairs talking to no one. But in his mind, he wondered if the little boy was talking to the person who died at a funeral. So, in addition to that general outline, then in his third and fourth draft, he came up with the idea of making the protagonist, the little boy, this hyper compassionate character. So that way, the overall theme for Haley and M. Night to talk about was that this film is about communication and compassion, not just talking to ghosts, you know?
Hmm. And I remember hearing the story about the whole Sixth Sense and the Are You Afraid of the Dark episode. What I remember most about it was I heard the description of the story. It sounded different enough to where it's like, you know what? Like it's fine. Like there's nothing really original under the sun anyways. So it's not a big deal to me.
And I mean, people have been making content about ghosts and talking to dead people for years, and they're going to keep doing that. So maybe subconsciously he was inspired by one of those things, but I do appreciate that it was an original screenplay. It wasn't adapted material from a book. It wasn't adapted material from a movie or a show. Like it was all his brain, which I appreciate.
Mhm. Just to touch back into this conversation a bit, one thing I don't know if you know, but this movie was almost going to be even scarier than what it actually was released as. Did you know about
That's
the
right.
deleted scene?
No, what was the deleted scene about? I do know they had to
So
cut a bunch of stuff so it could remain PG-13, but I didn't know what happened.
so that was the reason for this deletion. For those who watched the film, if you remember, there was a burn victim woman in one scene for a little bit, and we can remember how gruesome she probably looked. Thing is that there was supposed to be a scene where we see Cole looking out the a window, I'm assuming in his own room,
Mm-hmm.
and he looks completely terrified, and we don't see what it is, but then we see what he's seeing outside of his window, and apparently across the street is a hospital where there was a huge fire, and he's seeing dozens and dozens of burn victims in like every single room of the hospital or something like that. And they had filmed that. It was almost going to be in the movie, but then, like I said, to make sure the movie stays PG-13, they ended up cutting that altogether.
Yeah, I vaguely remember hearing about something like that now. And I'm glad they cut it because I feel like the instances that they showed the ghosts were like manageable. I think if they'd showed a whole swarm of ghosty boys burning, I think that would have been kind of difficult even for viewers to take in because it would have been just so drastically more violent than everything else in the film.
Mm-hmm.
So for this film, M. Night Shyamalan is really just described as a family man. He really values his wife and his daughters and his in-laws. Like they kind of have a whole little tribe and they all live really close to each other and he just really values that family time. And I think a lot of that came up from his upbringing. So here was an interesting quote from the New Yorker a little bit about his upbringing. As a filmmaker of color who came before Hollywood's millennial era reckonings with diversity, Shyamalan resisted being defined by difference without downplaying it either. Shyamalan's quoted saying, "Maybe because I'm an immigrant, because I've always been like the one Indian kid in school and all that stuff, I've never been able to quite fit in," he told me. In 1970, when he was 6 weeks old, Shyamalan immigrated from Pachuri, India, to the United States with his parents, who were doctors. He attended Catholic private schools, where he stood out in parts as an academic overachiever. Being considered an outsider has always been okay, he said. You always have the desire to be accepted, but I want to be able to say, these are the value systems that are important to me, and I'll burn down the house for them. So I just really liked that quote because I feel like it just said a lot to who he is and what he values instead of just trying to make films and stuff to appease societal norms and demands. Which leads me into my last point. Like over the last few years, the media's really targeted him as a creative burnout and as someone who only makes B-list films. I
Mm-hmm.
Audiences were so quick to forget like he was making Oscar worthy films. And now because he's making some films that are different than what audiences want, they're now getting their panties in a bunch saying that he's a creative burnout, which I don't think is true. I know you have a lot to
Uh,
say about M. Night Shyamalan too.
you know, yeah, and I guess that's the perfect segue now into our. Now we're getting into our debate part. Fine, here we go.
All right,
Look,
bring it.
do I think M. Night Shyamalan has skill as a director? Yes, he has definitely made some great movies. That cannot be denied. The Sixth Sense was great. Personally, I'm a fan of Unbreakable and Split. The last movie in the East Rail 177 trilogy, Glass, was terrible. Um, so to say that he's a creative burnout, I don't know that creative burnout is the right word. He's definitely losing steam. I think because I was for record today, I was looking into first who he is as a director and how
Mm-hmm.
people who have worked under him have responded to his methods. And it turns out he's actually a really cool guy. He cares a lot about his art, and he's firm, and he knows how to motivate his people, which is great. So he has skills as a director, but he cannot seem. The fact is, if you look at all of his films, which I did, I looked at the Rotten Tomatoes, just critic score, audience score, did a whole breakdown of what the average score was. Critic wise, he comes in at 48%, somewhere around that number on
Wow.
average. And audience wise, he comes in at 57%. Basically, if you take the Sixth Sense out of the equation, the whole number just drops. Starting from most popular to least popular. Sixth Sense came in with an audience score of 90%, and then the second one is Split, which had 79%.
Hmm.
So if I just get rid of the Sixth Sense altogether, that I mean we're looking at 45%, 55%. So not a terribly significant drop, but still, that's not the best numbers. So here's what I think about it.
Okay.
He's made some great movies, but he's
Hmm.
also made a fair share of flops. And especially as an Avatar: The Last Airbender fan, that in and of itself is the most grievous sin. I mean, Kylie, he was trying to make that as a gift to his daughter, who was a fan of the show. He saw
Yeah, I
her like
know.
it. I got 5%
That
as
that
a,
is pretty bad. It's
it was really bad. And
I
look, so I will admit to my bias there, but still. And the other thing is he does a decent job is of writing twists. He was really good at it in the 90s and even up to the mid 2000s, but then it kind of became his gimmick.
mm,
And the problem with that is when you know every time that a director is going to make a movie and the whole point of the movie is that there's going to be a twist, everyone's not watching the movie to just watch the movie. Everyone's watching it to prove how intellectual they are and find how many hints they can see and predict the twist at the end,
I feel
which
like
is
Jordan
not
Peele does
great.
that too.
Yeah, Jordan Jordan Peele does that a little bit as well. So is M. Night Shyamalan good at making movies? Yes, he does. He knows what he's doing. He's making great choreography for all of his different shots. And like I said, he's really good at motivating his cast and crew, according to other people's testament.
Hmm.
But fact wise, he has not come out with anything really good in quite a while. At the
Oh,
end of the day, that's kind of what you have to do. You have to make stuff that the people like too. It's the I will also, you know what? I will also give him a little bit of applaud for sticking to trying to make original stories. Not everyone does that nowadays. So I would say if he were here in the room, I would say to him, "No, you haven't made anything good in a while. You've seems like you kind of been living off the steams of the Sixth Sense and other things that you did
you would say that to his
early on."
face?
But I would encourage him to keep going forward because I'm sure he can make some other good stuff. He hasn't done it in a while.
That's
And I think
fair.
he has the talent to do so. He just hasn't figured out the right thing yet.
Yeah.
You know,
I agree with a lot of what you've said. I will say though, for argument's point, I will say that not necessarily all of his movies are bad. I think saying that something
did you
is
watch The
bad is
Happening?
no, but I will say that labeling something as bad is very subjective and it's due to an individual person's perspective and experience. So I know that there are some diehard like M. Night Shyamalan fans out there who love all of his work just because of who he is as a director. And I think I do like how he treats his actors and his crew. I like that he does, like you said, original stories, but I don't necessarily think he's reached a creative burnout. I can't quite tell what's going on because I know his newest film is an IP that he got the rights to. So
Are you
I
talking
don't know.
about Knock on the Cabin or Knock
Yeah,
at the Cabin?
that's based
See,
on a book.
that's the thing. Like, I'm probably going to watch that tonight, and I'm excited to watch it because it looks interesting. He has interesting things. It's just that some of his stuff have been kind of a hit and a miss, and that happens.
Yeah. I mean, I feel
He
like
just
most directors end up having that point in their career, but I will say I think he is still super talented because you don't write a film like it's almost becomes like an imposter syndrome if you make a film as big as like The Sixth Sense. You probably have that
Hmm.
insecurity in the back of your mind of like, can I ever make something that great ever again? Because it was something that pretty much all audiences loved. There was not a specific group that was like, I hate this movie. So
Hmm.
I would say he's super talented, and I would say a lot of people maybe haven't liked some of his more recent stuff, but I wouldn't necessarily peg it as being bad because of that. I haven't seen a lot of his recent stuff. I've seen Split and I really enjoyed it. So
Well, it was
I'm not,
very good, yes.
I have not seen most of his more recent stuff, but I am going to now that I've seen,
Hmm.
like, done more research on who he is. I'm more interested in watching his work. But I think we should, at this point, we both can say in agreement, he's talented. Some of
Hmm.
his stuff has not been received well by audiences in recent years, hence why people are labeling him as a creative burnout, which I personally don't agree with because I believe that you can bounce back from that and that he still has the brain and the potential to keep making stuff that audiences will like.
Yeah, and I'm even willing to concede, yeah, burnout is probably the wrong term. Again, it's just going back maybe to like, or maybe like just a sports analogy of like, hit and a miss. Sometimes you have a bad streak.
Yeah.
But I
I
will say
mm-hmm.
I applaud him because you're talking about like, oh, well, maybe there's this imposter syndrome of can he ever make something as good as The Sixth Sense again? The answer is maybe not. But that means it says something that he keeps coming back and trying again and again, you know?
Amen. Yeah. I like that. You summed that up really well. So I'm going to zip over to production design and costumes because I just have a couple little things about that. So Bruce Willis's wardrobe was a very key indicator of who he was. They would make very slight adjustments to alter his wardrobe while keeping the main pieces. So that way, when they did the reveal of the bullet going through his back at the very end, you would realize, oh shoot, he's been wearing the whole same costume the whole movie, and we didn't notice. So, as a note on that, the costume designer was Joanna Johnson. She and her incredible team did a great job creating very subtle changes that audiences would assume he's wearing something different. So, some of her other credits are Death Becomes Her, Forrest Gump, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and Back to the Future 2 and 3. A couple other production notes that I had was red was a prominent theme for whenever a dead person would be close by. So if you look back and think about all the moments that Cole is about to interact with a ghost or does interact with a ghost, you see like a red blanket, a red sweater, a red balloon. All those are key indicators of what's happening. They would, for making the actors cold, they would literally do just that. They would drop the AC and make the actors
Oh,
cold for that scene.
did you happen to read about the Haley Joel Osment one scene? I guess it was like in the tent. What happened with him for that?
No, what happened?
They would keep so like you were saying, they kept the room below freezing and he had to be in his underwear.
Oh my
And
gosh.
that's how they because they didn't have CGI to like
Yeah, like
make the whole breath
fog.
fog, there you go, appear.
Mm.
So he for I don't know how long, but probably a significant amount of time because they're trying to film the scene. They had that little boy just chilling in his underwear in a below 32-degree Fahrenheit room,
That
which
sounds
I thought was like, wow,
so cold.
that's yeah.
Wow. So the film is primarily, like you said, there's no CGI, so they get away with doing a lot with very fairly like vaguely ominous scenes with really low lighting and lots of shadows. And I think that's one thing that makes this film stand out is like there is no CGI or special effects, but it still works. And I think a big part of that is due to the makeup team. The makeup team, a couple people on that are Richard Alonso, who was special effects, who worked on a lot of the 2000s Star Trek films. Michelle Bigger, who was on Avatar, King Kong, the 2005 version, and Allegiant. So I think it's important to note that some of the ominous vibes that they were getting and some of the scariness was because of the makeup that they did with the ghosts, because they did simple things that worked. And the DP or cinematographer was Tak Fujimoto, who we know from, I believe it's Silence of the Lambs, and he worked in Star Wars. So we have another connection there to Star Wars and one of the other films that we've talked about. And the one other thing I had was just two fun facts. So M. Night Shyamalan, like I said, is from Philadelphia. So when he filmed this, he made a point to use a lot of specific location hints, like pen-made sour cream, which is only available in Philadelphia. A lot of new logos for the Philadelphia Eagles and 76ers from 1996 and 97. And the one last little thing that I had was the actress who played Kyra, you know how she's like basically puking all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I've done this in a short film before. So usually what they do is a soup, like a chunky soup or oatmeal that they have you hold in your mouth. And then you like on camera have to be like, and do it correctly.
I heard she
So
had to hold soggy cereal in her mouth. Is
yeah,
that what it was?
so I believe that's what it was, because I was trying to find the right information, but typically in movies they'll do like a type of chunky soup, soggy cereal, oatmeal, something like that, or like a canned food. I think I did canned corn when I did mine.
Ugh.
That was added. Yeah, it was gross. Like you honestly, like when you fake puke, part of you wants to puke actually a little bit because it's a lot to hold in your mouth. That sounded dirty. That was not my intention. But yeah, so I thought it was cool that, I mean, for audiences who don't know, that's a little magic of behind the scenes, how you can get actors to puke convincingly on camera and it for to really look like vomit.
I'll add a little bit more since you were just finishing up there with the fake puke story, which
Yeah.
was the actress that played Kyra. I remember hearing a story where she was showing that, well, the movie, but then they got to that one scene. She was showing the movie to some of her friends, and or might have been her sister, and they were watching the scene. And when she did her fake puke scene, they had to leave the room
Dang. She was too
because
good at it.
she was too good. She couldn't handle it. I thought that was
That's
very funny.
that's awesome. That is funny. Thank you everyone so much for tuning in to this deep dive episode of Survive This Crit. I encourage you all to share this episode with a friend. We are actually trying really hard to get some amazing guests on our show next year, like ones that are going to blow your mind. And a lot of that, we need the algorithm to help us to be able to get those people to be on our show. So please make sure to like, share the show, make sure to comment, and tell us what movie we should do next as we're planning out our new year. So thank you so much, and bye now.
Bye, everybody.